Welcome back to DSR. I'm Bruce, and we are covering the Unearthed Arcana that came out yesterday. It's the September Unearthed Arcana, and it is for an update to the Arcane subclasses. And we're covering the Conjurer today. So first off, there's the description. And I do think Conjurers are one of the more interesting and evocative subclasses for Wizard. It's always cool to be summoning creatures, and while all wizards can do it, it's cool to have a subclass that focuses on it and is good at it. And we're going to see that they've made some changes to make it a lot better. So here are the design notes. Benign transposition is now a bonus action and can be used more often. That is great. It really needed to be a bonus action, otherwise it was kind of pointless. Durable summons now gives the summon creatures resistance to multiple damage types while it has temporary hit points. That's good because the biggest problem with summons is that they are too squishy and die a little too easy to feel like really useful. And then Splintered Summons is a new feature that allows you to summon a second creature when you cast one of the summoning spells listed. And that's pretty interesting. Now you're doubling up on the number of summons with one action. So we're going to read more about that one. It's pretty cool. All right, first off, the Conjuration Savant feature. Not much point in talking about this one because they did make it better from the 2014 version, but for all of the Wizard subclasses in the 2024 core rules, they all follow a template now. So it's better, but the template is the same across all of them. So this is going to be the same for every of the school specialist wizard subclasses. And you can see it's the same wording. They just swap out in those two spots the name of the spell school that matches your subclass. So this is the Conjurer, and therefore in those two spots, it's the Conjuration school. Otherwise, this is identical to all the other subclasses. And Minor Conjuration. This one's a bit sad. The 2014 Player's Handbook version of the Conjurer had this feature called Minor Conjuration, and they've removed it in both of the UA versions, both the June and September versions, which is a bummer because this was a pretty cool feature. I understand it did have problems because it didn't have enough boundaries on it to make it reasonably useful. And it ended up being a scenario where that put a lot into the DM's hands about deciding what they want to allow and what they don't want to allow. And depending on your DM, they could be so restrictive that this was useless and is a ribbon feature at best. Or if your DM was permissive, this could be overwhelmingly overpowered. Like since there's no gold piece limit on this, only a weight limit, then you could be summoning gems and using those gems as material components for your spells. And even, like 1,000 gold pieces worth of gems certainly costs less than 10 pounds. And if you conjure 1,000 gold pieces worth of gems, of diamonds, you can be casting, those, what is it, Raise Dead and even, probably resurrection spells for free using this. And that's an example of being, kind of the DMs that are really permissive about it. So it had some problems, but I think instead of removing it's so flavorful and cool that I'd rather see them keep it and just put some good boundaries on it so that it could be reasonably useful. And I think that would include obviously some sort of gold piece limit and some sort of limitation that you can't use this for material components. And also you can't use this to create specific instances of an item. You can create generic versions of an item. So you can create, a longsword, but you can't replicate Brissinger, the specific longsword of Aragon, right? You could replicate a generic key that's not going to fit any lock. It's just going to look like a key, but you cannot replicate that key that fits that lock that you saw once. Like I think those are kind of the boundaries you would put on this. Moving on in level 3, benign transposition. In the 2014 Player's Handbook, this was the sixth level feature that you got. They've moved it to 3rd level. In the June UA, they weakened it. It was still your action to use, but you only got one use, which was the same. You only had one use before. But in the 2014 version, your one use was restored whenever you cast any conjuration spell of 1st level or higher. In the June UA, it was only restored when you expended a 2nd level spell slot. So you didn't get to cast a 2nd level spell. You just consumed the spell slot to restore this. So far less useful. And then in the September UA, they've made 2 changes. First, It's moved to a bonus action, which is great. That at least puts it on par with Misty Step, which you had anyway. So this is like getting Misty Step without expending a spell slot. So at least there's a net benefit here, which you should have. This is one of your subclass features. It should be better than if you just used one of your regular spells that you already had anyway. And then they just, instead of giving you a way to recharge it, they gave you a number of uses equal to your intelligence modifier, and you regain all when you finish a long rest. So you're going to get at third level probably 3 of these because your intelligence can be 16 or 17, so your modifier is a +3. You're going to get 3 uses per long rest, which is like 3 second level spell slots. So for a teleport, which is great because teleporting is something that wizards often want to do, usually to get away from melee, to get out of targeting range, things like that. So that's great. And then moving on to level 6, distant transposition. So this wasn't a feature at all in the 2014 Player's Handbook, so there's nothing to compare it to there. But in the June version, they did add this, and it appears again in the September version that we got yesterday. And it's very mechanically, it's identical. The wording is slightly different, and that's only to reflect that you now have multiple uses instead of one use. But this is great because it increases the range of your benign transposition to 60 feet. So now it has double the range of a Misty Step, and you get all of your uses back on a short or long rest. So now you're going to have, by level 6, you should have an 18 intelligence. So you're going to have an intelligence modifier of +4, which means you get to do this 4 times per short rest, which is crazy. That's really good and probably the most free teleportations that anyone gets. I think that even beats the Archfey Warlock. So that's maybe a little too much. I'm not sure. Like that's a lot. Now teleportation doesn't have infinite usefulness. So you only need to teleport, maybe once or twice a combat, but this is more than enough to teleport every round of combat if you really wanted to. And I think there's a level of diminishing returns, which is maybe why they just gave it to you. And at some point, maybe they should say you can do this at will every round. And they just make it easier so there's no uses to track. I don't know. This might be too much. Then moving on, you have another feature in the UA at level 6, and this is interesting because it appears in the 2014 Player's Handbook, and it was your 14th level feature. Now, I love what they did here, and I always wanted them to do this, so I'm very glad to see that they added this, which is they moved it to a lower level, so level 6 now, but instead of having it just be a flat 30 temporary hit points, it's now equal to twice your wizard level. So at level 6, you're going to get 12 temporary hit points. At level 14, you would get 28 temporary hit points, so very nearly the same. And at level 20, you're going to get 40. So this is way better. You get it earlier, it adds a little, and it scales up as you level up, just as it should, especially since you're a conjurer, so you're supposed to be a summoner, but you didn't get anything to really buff your summons until level 14 in the old Player's Handbook. Now you're getting something to buff your summons starting at level 6. And on one hand, you could say, well, that would be great to get some buff for my summons earlier than 6, so I feel like a summoner sooner. The problem is the wizards do not get any summon spells until level 5. And you only get wizard subclass features at level 6, so this is the earliest that it would matter. I guess technically you could be putting, you would add these temporary hit points to your Find Familiar. And in the September UA, they add another clause to the same feature, which is as long as your summon has these temporary hit points, they are gaining resistance to every damage type except Force, Necrotic, Psychic, and Radiant. And frankly, those 4 are probably the most rare most of the time. I mean, Necrotic is actually ranks up pretty high as far as the non-physical damage types. So that one's maybe uncommon in the number of occurrences, but the other 3, Force is very rare. Psychic and Radiant are rare. So this is really good. This is effectively, as long as they have those temporary hit points, doubling the number of hit points that they have. So very strong. Moving on to level 10, Focused Conjuration. The wording changed between the Player's Handbook and both of the UA versions, but the functional mechanics are identical. And between the June and September, they didn't even change a single word. So that's fine. I guess it's really good because if you're going to spend a big spell slot to summon a big creature, you don't want to lose your concentration on it. And 99% of the time, if you're going to lose concentration, it's because you took damage. So this is a strong feature. It was always good and remains good. So I guess they left that one alone. Makes sense. Moving on to level 14. This is where things get more interesting. Now, there was a feature at 14th level in the player's handbook, 2014 player's handbook, but that was the durable summons, which has moved to 6th level now, right? So there's nothing to really compare it to now because this feature didn't exist in the 2014 player's handbook. And in the June UA, they called it quick transposition. We're not going to go over it because they have completely thrown it out and done something totally different with this. And I'm glad they did that because they focused too much on teleportation for the Conjurer. And Conjurer just doesn't say to me like, "Oh, big teleporter class." You're going to be bopping around, and that's your main thing. Um, with the Conjurer, it really does feel like your main thing should be summoning, not teleporting. There's other maybe archetypes that are better, a better fit for bopping around and teleporting all over. And I don't think the Conjurer is it. So let's see what they did with the September UA. So the September UA, they came at this really hard, and I mean that in a good way. This is super powerful. So when you cast the Summon Aberration, Summon Construct, Summon Dragon, Summon Elemental, or Summon Fey using a spell slot, you can modify the spell to summon 2 creatures of the spell instead of 1. All right. So there are 9 summon spells in the game, and you get to use this with 5 of them. And all of these make sense. Summon Beast is more of a druid thing, so yeah, let's not have a conjurer get access to that and double up on that. Wizards don't even have access to Summon Beast anyway. Summon Celestial, same thing. Wizards don't have access to it. That's really the cleric's big summon. Summon Undead makes sense. The Wizards do normally have access to it, but Summon Undead, that's something you want like the Necromancer to be able to do, not the Conjurer. So you don't want the Conjurer stepping on the Necromancer's toes. So it makes sense to exclude all of those. Summon Fiend, though, is interesting. That one is on the Wizard spell list. And who would be summoning fiends as a wizard if not the Conjurer? So unless they plan on creating some sort of wizard demonologist subclass, I think that they should give the summon fiend to the Conjurer for this feature. I'm not sure why they excluded that one, so I don't know. We'll see. And another interesting part of this, it says each creature is of the same kind. So what does that mean? I went through and started looking at, and I had an idea of what it might mean. I happened to look at Summon Aberration first, and interesting, Summon Aberration actually uses the word kind. And of those 9 summon spells, 8 of them have a clause in the spell text like this, where it says, when you cast the spell, choose one of these things. And you have 2 or 3 different types you can choose. And in Summon Aberration, it actually uses the word, the creature resembles an aberration of that kind. So it seems very clear that that's their intent, is that when they say each creature is of the same kind, it's referring to that choice in the spell text. But it's a little murky. Like, let's look at Summon Dragon. Summon Dragon, now I said 8 of the 9 had a choice like that in the spell text. This is the 9th. Summon Dragon has nothing like that in the spell text. There is no choice that you make in the spell text. Now, it does have a clause in the stat block that you summon called Draconic Spirit. And in the stat block, it actually references when you cast the spell, you make some choices, and you make 2 choices, and it's for the shared resistance you get, and you're choosing one of those: acid, cold, fire, lightning, poison, and you're going to get that resistance. And it's also you also have to make the choice for the dragon's breath weapon. So if that is their intent with that wording that says each creature is of the same kind, does that mean that these choices have to be the same across both dragons, and you couldn't choose, say, a different resistance that you receive from each dragon? I think if that's their intent, and I do think that that is their intent, I think that they need to improve this wording to make that more clear. Maybe something like along the lines of, say, each creature you summoned uses all the same choice from the options you can select when you cast the spell. I don't know, something like that. They can word shop it. And moving on with this feature, so each creature is of the same kind uses the stat block and rules denoted by the spell and manifests in a different unoccupied space of your choice within the spell's range, but the summoned creature's hit points are halved. And we're going to come back to that because that's important. But let's finish this off. If you lose concentration on the spell, both creatures disappear. Makes sense. But remember, we have focused conjuration, which means we can't lose conjuration from taking damage. So 99% of the time, we can't lose concentration anyway. So that's going to protect this. Not nearly as scary as that might seem. And once you use this feature to modify a spell in this way, you must finish a long rest before you can do so again. So yes, there should be a limit on this. Otherwise, if you can just do this on every summon spell you cast everywhere, that's too much. This is super powerful. But you get to restore it, your use of it, by expending a level 5 or higher spell slot, no action required. So that's great. And that still makes this really powerful. All right, let's get back to that clause. The summoned creature's hit points are halved. So let's look at Summon Draconic Spirit or Summon Dragon, which uses the Draconic Spirit stat block. This is the highest level summon spell that you're allowed to use this on currently. And the Draconic Spirit has 50 hit points when you summon it, plus 10 for each spell level above 5. And at level 14, which is what you are to get this feature, you have 1/6 and 1/7 level spell slot. So you could cast this at a 7th level spell. So let's say, what does it look like if you cast this with a 7th level spell? Let's do some math. And let's get scratch paper out. So you cast it with a 7th level spell slot. That's going to give you a dragon. If anyone else casts it, they get one dragon with 70 hit points, right? But if you cast this, you get two dragons with 35 hit points each. And if it stopped there, this would be a terrible feature because 35 hit points at level 14 is so small that these guys are going to die in one hit, maybe a single AoE blast, and they both die. And then they were useless, and you wasted your 7th level spell slot. So, but remember, you've got durable summons, which at level 14 is going to give each of them 28 temporary hit points, because those hit points are not spread across the summons you summon. They are, each creature gets that many temporary hit points. So each one gets 28 temporary hit points, bringing them up to effectively 63 hit points. Now, temporary hit points often aren't as good as regular hit points, but this is a summon. They only last 1 hour anyway, so it's not like you're going to be healing them a lot. And you can't heal temporary hit points, but it's not going to matter that much, again, because they only last 1 hour. But wait, there's more. Because remember, durable summons gives them resistance to nearly every damage type, all of the most common ones by far. And as long as they have those temporary hit points, they've got this resistance. So it's really like effectively having 91 hit points, right? And you have 2 of them. So Joe Schmo Evoker, he uses 7th level spell slot to summon a dragon. He's got 1 dragon with 70 hit points. You have 2 dragons with effectively 91-ish hit points. You're coming out way ahead. I mean, that's more than twice as powerful. So even though they have half the hit points, it's net twice as powerful. I'd say more than twice as powerful, because you're talking about maybe putting like 182 hit points on the battlefield. The Evoker put 70 hit points on the battlefield. And you're doing twice as much damage with these because they're 2 creatures attacking and doing just as much damage as the Evokers. This is very, very strong. I love to see it. I love that you only get to do it once, and then it consumes a 5th level spell slot that feels pretty good. You're making important, significant decisions there of deciding, do I blow another big spell slot to do another big summon? But this is so good that I think it's worth blowing those 5th level spell slots to do more splintered summons. And I could see conjurers, once they get this, that's the only thing they ever concentrate on, is just summoning spells. So this is really strong. I think it's great. I think it's well balanced at 14th level. By the time you reach 20th level, I worry that it's maybe too powerful, because now you have additional 6th, 7th level spell slots. You've got 1/8, 1/9, and you have 3 5th level spell slots. That's enough that you could be doing a high level splintered summon in every combat of the day. And these last 1 hour, so you might get 2 combats out of one of these summons. I don't know, might be OP. I still don't think I would use my 9th level spell slot to do this. But I would definitely use my 8th level spell slot for this. I mean, in a heartbeat. Yeah, absolutely. Especially because summons at the even levels get another attack. So an 8th level Draconic Spirit has 4 attacks. A 7th level Draconic Spirit has 3 attacks. So I could definitely definitely spend your 8th level spell slot on this. 9th, maybe not. Save it for Wish or something, flexible. And where do they end up? Big thumbs up on this one too. Very strong, very interesting. A subclass that builds on itself and really fits the theme of what you're expecting out of this subclass. It's a strong summoner, maybe just a little bit overtuned, which is interesting because their last Arcane subclasses everything was underwhelming. I would say, like, everything was disappointing, a little underpowered, and I guess that's great that they do this playtest, because they took the feedback we gave them. made a much better versions this time, and now they're all maybe a little bit overtuned. I don't know. I worry that if these go out as is, you're going to start seeing that these are the only subclasses chosen, and all the previous subclasses from the core player, the 2014 Player's Handbook, just aren't going to get used anymore, just because these are so much better. And that's not a good thing for the game, for game design. You don't want to see things where you have a choice of subclass, but it's not really a choice because only one of them is the best, or these four are definitely not nearly as good, and these four are the best. So it really diminishes the value of making those interesting and valuable choices, which is a core part of this game, right? Making interesting choices as a player. So, yeah, big thumbs up, but a cautionary tale, maybe too much. I don't know. All right, let me know what I missed in the comments or what your thoughts are, or if you have different ideas. And thanks for watching.